Big Talkers. You're listening to Alia Bogdanoff with Big Talk Little Greek. Today we're talking about what it means to be self-made and the courage it takes to build from an idea to action. Whether it's struggling to get a business idea off the ground, doing something creative like writing a book, selling something on Etsy, or in my case, starting a podcast. There are practical steps we all have to take. We know about those. And then there are these invisible forces that are inside of us that stop us from finding the perseverance it takes to get there. Today we're going to hear two major stories of what it takes to be self-made and the real story behind making it. We start with Nathan King, who tells us about his personal journey of building a business, taking the risk to invest in a dream, and facing the rejections along the way. My husband, Boss Bogdanoff, joins us for a conversation about the struggles of building something from the ground up and the personal growth that has to go along with it. Next, I sit down with Erica King, Nathan's wife and co-partner in crime, to discuss a completely different type of journey. Erica recently joined her husband from a corporate world and is learning to balance motherhood with her decision to enter into a completely different career path. We talk about the struggles we face as mothers, whether working or staying at home, to find fulfillment and joy alongside and outside of raising children, as Eric and I both feel motivated to build a career and/or further our interests. So, big talkers, dig out that big dream or big idea from the dusty closet and get ready to overcome the personal fears and insecurity of being self-made. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on, Alia.
You're welcome. Well, I'm excited to talk about this. Today, we're talking about what it means to be self-made. And so what this episode is about is the courage that it takes to go from something you've created in your mind maybe and take that to actual action, right? And then all of the little invisible things that people don't see that we have to overcome to get there. So there's days where we feel depressed, we feel fearful, there's all these reasons why we don't make it, why we don't get there. So we want to hear a little bit about your story. So why don't you start by telling us what you do and then how you got there?
Sure. So I am a real estate agent here in the Fresno and Clovis market, and I've been doing it for about 5 years, right after I graduated from Fresno State with my industrial technology degree.
Interesting.
Yeah, I decided I didn't want to work in a manufacturing plant. And so that during school, I got my real estate license and started selling full-time in 2015.
Nice. And what did you do before real estate?
Before real estate, I really was directionless. When I graduated high school, I was really just all about partying. I like football. Yeah. I thought maybe I'll do football in college and did that, partied all the time, ended up, getting into drugs and misusing my energy and my drive and just crash and burn. I actually flunked out of school.
Wow.
And I did hit rock bottom. But, when I hit rock bottom, I bounced back because I was determined not to stay there.
Yeah, you've always been I've known you for a long time, just side note. Well, I've known you since I'm going to call it the fall.
Yeah.
The fall time of your life.
Yep.
But you've always been a very motivated person, and that's something that always stuck with me about you, is that you were not defeated and you weren't done. You were willing and completely motivated to get out of it.
Yep.
So then I think you did a lot of odd end things, right? You did painting for a while.
Yeah, I did internships with school.
Okay.
So I flunked out of school. I hit rock bottom, but I knew that's not, I had a calling on my life, and it was a lot more than that.
Yeah.
I think too many people, they hit rock bottom and they're defeated, and then they just kind of make a nest there at the bottom. It's like, no, you climb back out of the hole that you dug for yourself and, reach to the top of the mountain. And I was determined to do that with, good guidance. So I went back to school with my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, Erica. She kind of helped me get back on my feet, start doing open university at Fresno State. We ended up passing a physics class together, which was an absolute miracle. I was like, okay, I'll try it. I'm pretty decent at math. After the second class and the first homework assignment, I was like, I can't do it. I quit. and Erica's like, I was literally crying. And Erica's like, let's just go see the tutor. Okay, if we can't do the homework assignment and the tutor can't help us, then you can quit. I was like, fine, I'll do it. So I went to the tutor and everything made sense because I couldn't understand the textbook by itself.
Right.
But when you have a tutor explaining it to you, I was like, oh, I totally can do this. Ended up passing the physics class with a B+. And that was a real shot in the arm, which led to doing more open university and applying and getting accepted back into Fresno State, completing my Bachelor's of Science degree in industrial technology, while Erica was still going to school and got her Bachelor's of Science degree in kinesiology. And during that time, I realized that I really needed some work experience. And so I started doing some internships. And I did an internship at Pelco, the company that...
Oh, yeah, that makes
Schneider
cameras.
Electric,
Yeah.
And so I did that for about 6 months. And then I worked at my dad's shop also for about 6 months. And then I realized during that time working in the shop, I was like, man, I hate this. This is like, I'm literally like operating machinery.
Right.
Even if I became the manager at some point, it just wasn't for me.
Yeah.
You know, I'm more of a people person and more of an office, white collar type of job.
Yeah.
And so I realized that, okay, I need to do something different, but I'm already, you know, a junior.
Right.
With this degree. I'm not going to change my degree because it's still a really good degree to have. So during that time, I looked for another internship job, which was a College Works painting.
Yeah.
And so I did do some painting and did door-to-door, you know, sales. Doing that was really a grind. But
I remember that. I remember
yeah.
you used to go door to door.
Yeah. But I'm a pretty competitive person. So I continued to, you know, door knock, even though it was really hard. And I was competing with the other people in the market and had success. And during that time, I was also working on getting my real estate license because I knew that as soon as I was done with the internship and finished my degree, then I would go into real estate full time, which I did.
That we have a little bit of context on you, Nathan, and where you come from. I have a special guest also here, my husband, Vas Bogdanoff.
Hey.
And he's here. I asked him to be part of this episode because, you know, I've watched him build his own empire. Just kidding.
Empire. Not quite there
I've
yet.
watched him build his own business for years. And I think the part that fascinated me the most wasn't just that, you know, he's a hard worker. I know a lot of people who are hard workers. He can move every single day for 16 hours. He can do what it takes. And that's not the part that always really stayed with me and impacted me about him. It was the fact that, you know, there is so much you have to overcome when you are starting something like all by yourself. You know, so I was coming up with this last night. There's the first step, which is, you know, you've got to have the learning curve. You've got to have this idea, and then you've got to go to learning curve. Okay, what is it? How do I get certified? What do I need, right? For my husband, it was, you know, what kind of business? Is it an S Corp? Is it a C Corp? What are the differences? Talking to people, you know, there's all this groundwork that has to be laid. Then there's the actual, like, what do I need to do every day? You know, you have to get up every day and make something up, right?
Right. You
have to organize yourself every day. And then there's the actual, like, hard days where you get up and you don't know what you're supposed to do next. Mm-hmm. And those, I think, are the crucial days. Because most people putter out on ideas because they don't see the flow happening in their life. They don't see, you know, they don't get calls back. That's kind of the thing. They don't, you know, they look into something and it turns out being the wrong thing, and they get lost and they don't have any contacts. And those are the days when people wake up and they realize, like, do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to keep pushing?
So many people give up before you get the momentum.
Yes.
Because that momentum could take 2, 3, 4 years to develop.
Yes.
But once you got Big Mo behind you,
yes,
you just coast. You just coast. And it's amazing to see the success when you really do push through day in and day out.
Yeah, that's you hit it on the head, Big Mo. So babe, why don't you talk a little bit about how when you started your business. I know you did a few things before, but when you started Troika One Construction, talk a little bit about what that was like for you.
Well, going into Troika One Construction, I think we decided to go bigger and also take on more than I've ever taken on before.
Yeah.
So I've always done some sort of construction, but always a more smaller operation. And so by starting this company, I basically decided that I no longer wanted to do the small jobs.
Right.
Because
you were doing the small jobs and you were not motivated.
Yeah. No, it was actually really, really difficult for me. I did a lot of years. I worked as a handyman. Nathan knows me back then. I mean, when you were doing the house painting, I was reminiscing. I would come in, I would do the fascia board repair and fix all the rotted wood, and you know, and it was great. And I made good money. Actually, sometimes I think I made better money as a handyman than I do running the company I run right now with my partners. And it's just, but the reality is that it's the growth potential.
Yeah.
And that's what I craved. I craved to be able to grow. And I realized I could only work so many hours in a day by myself before I'm done. And I could only grow as much as I could fit in one day. And as a handyman, I could only do, 2 jobs, 3 jobs. I can work 10 hours, 12 hours. I really was crazy. But that was it. And so I saw my ceiling, and I actually got depressed knowing that I had a ceiling.
Yeah.
And that was really difficult for me. And I kind of see, like, in your eyes, you can see you're probably reminiscent, or, you could connect with me on that one.
Yeah, I totally understand. And, I took a course at Fresno State called Entrepreneurship 101. And one of the things that stood out to me the most in that course, which I actually failed, but I learned a lot. But he said that the true definition of an entrepreneur is a business owner who makes money while he sleeps.
Right.
And so
Awesome.
if your income is solely dependent on your efforts, then you truly have not reached that true entrepreneurship, that true financial freedom that we're all driving towards.
Right.
Right. Whereas I remember one guy told me, if you are out there and you're working and you're self-employed, you're still an employee.
Right.
Right. You're not a business owner. You're self-employed.
Right. Exactly.
And so, yeah, that's the difference. So I love that making that definition. But the building up to that point, man, it's tough. I mean, there was a lot of points where, starting the company that we started right now, there's times when you're like, we're not going to make it. You realize that you have to spend a lot in order to go to the next step. And that's really scary, because when you realize that, okay, I have to now set up a shop. I got to set up my payroll. I mean, payroll taxes are expensive.
Oh, man.
When you work for yourself and you don't have to deal with all that stuff, and you're just like, oh, I
just
made
have
the money, put it in my
write-offs.
bank account.
Right.
Yeah, it's all good. No, when you have to put people on payroll, and now you have insurances that you have to pay for that are expensive. Everything just gets more and more expensive, and you realize that you have to do that in order to get to the next step.
Yeah.
And now you're driven. You're like, okay, now I have this overhead. I have to make X amount every month just to pay my overhead. But as scary as that is, it's also kind of exciting, because you realize that you're doing so much more than you were when you were, starting out. And that, I think, the part of it too, it's scary, but it's also it's exciting.
I think there's an inner fulfillment that happens when you can see something in your head and then you're working towards it. When you're working for somebody else and you have no vision. I mean, if you're climbing the ladder somewhere, that's one thing. Like, I'm trying to get from company XYZ because I want to end up at company, what's after Z? Nothing. Infinity. I want to get to the end, right?
Company Infinity.
That's the difference. But when you think up something yourself, when you're planning it and organizing it in your own mind, and then you're trying to get somewhere, part of that journey is so fulfilling. Like, I talked to Voss, like, when I started this podcast with Whitney, my first podcast that I did, we started last end of summer last year, and it started off as like her and I having these great conversations. There wasn't a whole lot of planning that we had to do, just because, it was based off of just her and I and our interests. But in the moment we stopped working together and she went on to do some other projects, and I was really excited at first, like, wow, now I get to do a totally different thing. I've always wanted to have guests on. Voss sat down and he was like, okay, go write out your business plan. I was like, business plan? He's like, well, you have to have a plan.
Yeah.
And I spent, I think at midnight one night, I was writing for like 3 or 4 hours, and I wrote out formatting of each episode. I wrote out several ideas. I made a list of 25 people, which you were on this list, by the way,
Thank you.
of people I wanted to interview. I think I came up with like 14 different names before we landed on Big Talk Little Greek. There were so many things. And then I had to find something. Okay, what's the content? How do I explain this to somebody else so that they're interested? And I kept changing the explanation, because I would describe it to someone and they're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Yeah. And I'm like, nope, that's not it. Yeah. Okay, I got to get something else. So, there was a lot of motivation behind it. But then there were also days when my mind would just run for hours on ideas, right? Mm-hmm. You know that feeling, Nathan.
Absolutely.
You wake up and you're like, I'm going to do this today. Oh, I know, I'm going to post this, or I'm going to do this. And that's going to kind of fuel you forward a little bit more.
Yeah. I actually hit a ceiling to where it's like I wanted to do all this stuff, but the urgent and important stuff had to get done right now. And so there was no longer time for anything else.
Yeah.
All this other stuff, they were important, but they weren't urgent. All my time was dedicated to the important and urgent. And that's when I realized, okay, I need to leverage. I need help. I need an assistant. I need to bring on, and then that wasn't enough. Then I had to bring on Erica. And so you hit this ceiling and you realize, okay, in order to grow, I've got to spend more money,
Yes.
Pay somebody's salary in order to grow. And when I first got into the business in 2015, I didn't have any family or anybody to give guidance to show how to be successful in real estate.
Yeah.
And real estate, it is a business. It is like, you're self-employed. You're working for yourself. But there's so much to know, so much to learn, and so many different ways to do the business. It's like, you're just overwhelmed with information. You don't even know what to do.
Right.
And then you're losing money because you're not making any money. You're spending money and you're not bringing anything in during the beginning. That's why, 90% of realtors are out of the business within the first 2 years.
Wow.
Because it's really hard to make that transition. Thankfully, during that time, we didn't have any overhead. So, and Erica had a sweet job, so I was able to kind of learn. But within 9 months, I was like, man, this isn't working for me. I don't know what I'm doing. So I did two things. Number one, I got a coach, someone who's already been there and who could give me specific guidance on what I need to do and when. And then I got on a team as well. And the team provided me with clients to help, as well as, real mentorship.
Nice.
Maybe not so much like actual coaching, because coaching and mentorship are actually kind of different.
Right.
Because you can be mentored by somebody not even in your industry, right? But you can't be coached by somebody who's not in your industry. Right. And I think both of those have a huge, huge impact on somebody's ability to be successful.
Yeah, I think that support is huge. And I think, well, within a marriage, Voss and I, I feel like I partially built Troika 1 too.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Because there were plenty of days where, his mind was just consumed with where to go next, running into problems, how do we take it this direction? And we would sit down and we'd talk all of that out. And I didn't have any experience as a construction person or just even how to build a business. I have a business degree, but I've never been there myself. But I have enough experience with my business degree where I could give really good input. I could listen to what he was feeling and what he was dealing with, and then I could give him some advice on how to move forward. And then I think a lot of the other stuff is, I think what you don't realize in building something is how much relationship matters and how much relationship goes into it. Voss has 2 partners. One's his brother, so that's going to cause problems because you got family involved.
Hey,
and the other one's
working out just fine.
and the other one's his best friend. But there's a lot more in relationship when you have connections like that, because him and his brother had to work through brother issues. About the way they talk to each other, or when one of them gives an idea and the other one, they kind of fall into these old behaviors. Now, that didn't matter before, but now there's people and money on the line. Now that matters.
Well, actually, I was thinking about what Nathan was saying earlier, how much Erica was a integral part of even getting you onto this path, right? And getting you back into school.
I have so much support behind me,
right?
And I couldn't have done it without all these people, including Erica.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, what Alia was just saying too, there's been plenty of days where I'm down in the dumps. And if it wasn't for Alia being right there and encouraging me, helping me walk through it, talking about it, it would have been, it would have ended in disaster. And so even what you're saying earlier about having a mentor, having the insight to say, I need to bring somebody in that's going to guide me onto this path. That's massive and that's huge. And then being real and authentic to the people that you are involving in what you're doing, right? So with my brother, for example, just last night, him and I had a meeting where we talked about it, and realizing that it's not about hiding the ugly from each other. It's about being willing to work through it once it happens, right? So there's going to be times when you are not going to be feeling good, or there's times when you're going to rub each other the wrong way, right? Speaking of on my end, having business partners.
Yeah.
But being willing to work through those issues, being willing to go there and say, okay, this didn't turn out great. Let's talk about it, right? I'm not feeling good about this. And it's so hard to confront each other. And I get that. I think as people generally, we don't like confronting each other. And that's just on the personal side. But I'm thinking about what you have going. I mean, you've now established you have a team that you work with, right? As I understand.
Yep.
You've got Erica's coming on board with you too. She's working with you.
Yeah.
And so
She's
you've got
crushing
you're doing the same thing I'm doing. You're bringing people that that are close to you, and now you're bringing them under the wing of what you're doing for work. And there's another level of communication that has to kick in at that point.
Yeah, because you've got to manage. I'm just thinking about that. You have to manage all those people. And what happens when someone steps out of line? Maybe not intentionally, but they step out of your vision, or you need to approach somebody and you need to, you realize I have to talk to them about this because that they're kind of headed in the wrong direction.
Right. 2019 was not a great year for me as far as management and hiring people. I brought in like 5 people and none of them worked out, and it was definitely disheartening. But I really did learn a lot what not to do.
Yeah.
Right. Who I do want to work with, and how to manage them, because you cannot manufacture motivation.
Yeah.
You can't manufacture motivation in your client, who may or may not want to buy a house or make an investment.
Right.
They either have the motivation or they don't. I cannot convince them otherwise.
Right.
I can tell them the pros and cons about a particular house, but I can't manufacture that motivation. And the same goes for a team member.
Yeah.
I cannot manufacture that motivation for them to wake up and when they feel sick, when their stomach hurts, to continue to push through.
Right.
And, make the calls and, go on the appointments and just get out there face to face. You either have it or you don't. And frankly, entrepreneurship's not for everybody.
Yeah,
it's not for the faint of heart. If you don't like being rejected, and you cannot force yourself to, if you don't have the self-control to push through anyways, don't do it. Go work for somebody else, help make somebody else's vision a reality, because they are willing to make those sacrifices.
Right.
Or if you're not willing to put your money on the line, where it's an investment, meaning you could lose it, then again, entrepreneurship's not for you.
And those intangible things are so, I think they're so missed in conversation about what it takes to build something. Everybody likes releasing like the 10 things to be successful, but they don't talk about the rejection that you have to face. They don't talk about when you reach out to somebody and they don't call you back, or when you are working with someone and they screw you over, and how that makes you feel in relationship to trusting someone else again. And there's such a personal growth that happens because you're constantly putting like yourself out there every single day, and you're constantly, giving more of yourself. And it's some days extremely emotionally exhausting. I see that in my husband. I see when I used to work, there's so much that you give to that. So I think I keep going back to this podcast because that's what I'm doing right now, but I am experiencing it on a whole different level where I'm realizing, there's days where I get up and boss will be like, okay, can you call your next interviewee? And I'm like, I'll text them. He's like, no, you could just call them right now. I'm like, I'll send them an email. And he's like, pushing me, and I
call, text, and email. That's what I do. If you want to get a hold of somebody, do all, and then Facebook message them
at the same time.
Oh,
right?
you know what?
Well, you're doing the opposite. I'm trying to avoid the talking. No, because there's always this, this idea that like they may reject me, and you really don't know how hard that you're facing that feeling until it's right there in front of you.
After you've been rejected so many times, you kind of get numb to it.
That's good to know.
Like for instance, yesterday I had 4 Zoom call appointments, because of the coronavirus right now. We're not meeting face to face. So I had 4 Zoom call appointments scheduled, or my assistant scheduled 2 of them. I scheduled 2 of them on my calendar. And I called and texted them to confirm the appointment, and 3 of the 4 bailed on me.
Oh.
I mean, if
that's
not
your day.
Yeah, exactly. That was my whole afternoon got blown. Well, I had plenty to do, with the canceled appointments, but that is a form of rejection.
Yeah.
Right? They said they were going to do it. They said they were going to meet with you, and then they didn't meet with you. Now they might in the future, they might not. Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's those sort of things where it's like opportunity missed. But eventually, if you look at numbers, because entrepreneurship is sales. First of all.
Right.
And sales is numbers. And there's going to be a certain amount of failure involved with one sale. And so you just look at it like, okay, well, yesterday is a perfect example. I had 4 appointments scheduled and 1 worked out. That is a 25% conversion rate for my appointments. And you break everything down into the numbers. And I really I am not offended at all that my clients bailed on my appointment. It's to me, it's just it's a numbers game. It's like they were busy. they didn't, they weren't living by their calendar because of the coronavirus and they were just watching movies all afternoon. Who knows?
Right. So that you're saying that like that resilience that you have now, that's something that grew over time. Because I'm sure in the beginning, if you had 4 calls and they canceled, right, you wouldn't have felt, you would be like, oh no, okay, how do I pay my mortgage?
Yeah, well, it's really, again, it all goes back to the numbers. So if I have enough clients to contact, enough appointments to go on, then even if they flake or I can't convert, whatever else, it's fine because I've got all these other clients that I'm going to help.
Right.
So if I'm converting, if I've got all these clients, but I'm only, putting 5% of them into escrow and then only closing 90% of those escrows, like it's going to be okay. And if it's not okay, that means you need more clients. So then it really comes down to how do I get more clients?
Yeah.
Right.
I just want to go back to something though. You mentioned a little bit before this about just kind of going numb, right?
Yeah.
And thinking back to the beginning, right? Especially when you first started out in this and dealing with a lot of different clients, a lot of different customers, everybody. And thinking back, I mean, that transition from where you are now, where you're like you've built the strength, you kind of thickened your skin in that area, right? But think back and about how you were when you first started out. Like, how did that make you feel the first time people like dropped out on you, or you had this big potential, then you went to go show the house and the person never showed up, right?
Yeah, and you didn't have a streamline of income.
Yeah.
Right. You didn't have the pipeline already of clients, right?
Right. Well, it kind of brings me back to, as you were thinking about or talking about that, it brings me back to like when we were in college and you're getting ready for a big test. And like, I'm not the type that gets all like nervous and flustered before a test. I'm numb. I just go in there. I'm like, I'm going to pass it or I'm not going to pass it, but whatever. I'm not going to like get stressed out about this. I'm going to give it my best.
Right.
And it's that same kind of mentality that I bring to this, work environment, and meeting with clients. Like, it's going to work or it's not going to work. We're going to because you don't connect with everybody.
Right. Yeah.
So some people rub you the wrong way, or you rub them the wrong way, or you made a certain comment that made them like doubt you or not like you for whatever reason. Because people judge you based on like the first like 6 seconds of meeting you or talking to you. They've already decided if they'd like you or not, and maybe you just got off a bad phone call, and so you're all flustered, and then you screw up that phone call because of the other phone call. It's like, or they hung up on you, and the last time you called, they hung up on you. So then you're like, I don't want to call them again, but I'm going to call them anyways because they could have been just in a bad mood the last time that they hung up.
Yeah.
Or in the middle of something. So it's again, it's not personal.
Yeah.
And you just do it anyways.
No, but that's the thing. You have this unique ability to not take it personal. I think a majority of people do take it personal. And, I reached out to two people the other day to do an interview, and I haven't heard back. And, I check it like several times a day to see if I got those emails. And it's hard not to struggle with this feeling of like, why don't they want to do it? Even if they don't want to do it, why can't they just send me a no so I know that they don't want to do it so I can move on in my head?
I would say 3 attempts.
3
So you got to try 3 different times, and you have to try like. So this is what I do for a lead or client.
Yeah.
I will attempt to reach them, call them, leave a voice message, then send a follow-up video text. Video texts are really powerful. It's almost as powerful as like meeting them with a coffee, or writing them a handwritten letter. Video texts are huge. And then, maybe even send them an email. So boom, boom, boom. But you only count that as 1 attempt, even though you tried 3 different ways. And then you do it again, and then you do one more time. Now, if they still blow you off after those 3 attempts, then you stop. And that's what I would, encourage for you as well. And if you're like, oh, nobody's responding, it's like, okay, then you just got to grow your list of interviewees.
Yeah, that's right. That's what Voss always tells me. He told me the other day, well, instead of contacting 2 people, because you're going to have to talk to 2 people this week, why don't you write 7? I'm like, and it does something to you. I would have probably given him the same advice, but when it's yours and it's a baby, like when it's at the beginning, and not a lot of people know about it, and you're in convincing mode where you're like trying to convince people.
You're still trying to convince yourself.
Yeah, you're still trying to convince yourself that this is going to be okay and successful, and and then you have those little boosted moments where I have people reach out to me and say like, hey, I listened to your podcast and it was really awesome, or this was something. I like when people tell me something specific, like, hey, when you shared your story, man, I connected with that so much and reminded me of when I was growing up, and I just can relate to you so much. Those are things that keep me going because I realize okay, I do this because I am trying to make some kind of a connection with people out there, and I want them to connect in a certain way that I connect. But that's few and far between. You still have days in between that where you got to get things done. And, I'm a full-time mother. I've got 2 little ones and I'm like 8 months pregnant.
Yeah.
But I still think of this as a business for me.
Yeah,
and I run it like a business, and that's why I have a format, and that's why, I'm constantly thinking about like, hey, what can I release on social media today? I don't want to overexploit people, give them too much content. I want to give them enough. So I'm always strategizing, and, it's difference between when I'm doing dishes, because that's like a job I do every day, that I'm either going to be thinking about doing laundry and then what to feed the kids, or I'm going to think about, what I'm going to do next for my podcast and who am I going to bring in next? What's a good topic? What's a conversation? So it brings value to my life because it gives me something else to do instead of just, laundry is really boring.
Yeah.
And fulfilling. And
you listen to podcasts while you do your laundry, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what I do.
I think it might be a good time right now to start talking about current market. I know we talked about that, towards the end of the interview here. Just tell us a little bit about where we're headed. What's it looking like right now from your expert professional opinion, especially with the coronavirus and the economy kind of going into the unknown territory. That's how I look at it every day. I'm like, we just don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, I heard Donald Trump say last night that he's like, the cure cannot be worse than the virus itself.
Right.
And so with that in mind, it looks like the reduced business or restrictions are going to be lifted, within a week or so. And then we're going to be back to business. And then everybody just needs to be careful to keep your hands washed and not touch your face. And right now with the real estate market currently, there are still a ton of buyers shopping.
Really?
And all us realtors, we're just being really careful.
Yeah.
To, use hand sanitation and use like Clorox wipes or use a rubber glove when we're doing showings. Our clients don't touch us. They don't touch the doorknobs or the light switches. We're just going through it. Now, 50% of the buyers are not shopping, but I would say about 50% are, especially the lower price point. But here's what's more. Is 30 days ago, there were so many buyers in the market. It was insane. Like houses are getting 12, 13, 16 offers.
Right.
Especially for 250,000 and below.
Yeah.
And so now it's like those same houses are getting like 5 or 6 offers.
Right.
So it is still definitely, leaning towards a seller's market. I don't think things are going to change right now. Everybody's locked in their house, locked in their apartment. Why not be locked in your own house? Yeah. As long as your employment and your income is secure, which there's a lot of people who are still working, especially the government workers, which is like 50% of all the employees in America are like employed by the government, whether it's local, state, or federal government.
Well, and also the interest rates have just plummeted, right? So that's got to be good for the mortgage market. I mean, I've been hearing everybody I know has a house right now is talking about refinancing. Like, this is great. I'm going to knock off $200 off my payment.
So 2 weeks ago, when they did the first rate drop, they did like a 0.5% rate drop. The banks were at an all-time high for mortgage refinancing applications and new home loan financing applications.
Wow.
And so they were at an all-time high to the point where they were giving such low rates that they were worried about their inability to sell those origination, those loans on the secondary mortgage market. And so even though thereafter rates dropped again by the Federal Reserve, the banks were like, hey, you know what? We need to raise our mortgage rates because we need to get people to stop applying for mortgages and refinancing. So actually the reverse has happened.
Really?
Interest rates have actually recently gone up with this turmoil, which is like, it's just unprecedented, but again, I think it's all gonna pass over. Everything's gonna kind of calm
balance
down
out a little bit
here within the next 30 to 60 days. I don't think that the real estate market is really going to be that affected. Buyers still want to buy, sellers still want to sell. So and there were so many buyers anyway. So even if we lose 40% of the buyers, we're still in a really strong market.
Well, the inventory still seems pretty low. I mean, you and I talked, last couple of months of like back and forth, and I look at the market almost every day, and it's like there's the properties I'm looking for are just not there.
Yeah. A few weeks ago, I looked at the stats, and we had like 1.9 months of inventory, which is super, super low. Usually, we're at like 6 to 9 months of inventory, meaning no new houses come on the market, the current buyers, it would take them, 6 to 9 months to buy it
clear
all
out the
up.
market,
But
yeah.
it would only be, less than 2 months at this point.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
what would you say, Nathan, personally? Like, what's your specialty? Like, what do you love to work with? If someone comes to you as a client, what are they going to get from you?
Yeah. So if someone reaches out to me, we're first going to talk about what their real estate goals are. Are you looking to buy an investment property? Are you looking to buy your personal residence? Do you need to sell your current house to take that equity out for your next purchase? Or do you want to keep it as a rental? Like, we do an evaluation of each individual client, and then we can advise accordingly on what they need and what their best course of action is. And that's really what they get from us. We love helping, investors. We love helping, first-time home buyers. We love helping, even seniors downsize into senior living communities. So, we have a lot of expertise, and, it's just our pride and joy to assist anybody with their real estate needs.
Now, we personally have experience with you because you are a real estate agent.
Yeah.
We sold our house last year, and I was so thankful for you because before you showed up, my husband wanted to, what, babe? You wanted to like put $50,000 of repairs into the house. And
I was going to go
he was
all
like,
out.
we're going to tear out the front of the house. I've never liked where the door is. And I'm like, okay, we're flipping this house, but we're not going to move the front door. And he was like, a patio, an overlay. And I'm not kidding you, Nathan. We were like in a dire position where I was like, we need to sell this house in like 2 to 3 months. We're coming up on the hot months into June. And my husband, he's in construction. He is looking at like, how do I get the most value out of this house?
Yeah.
But I needed somebody to come in and tell me what we needed to do. And then we called you, you came over, you did a walkthrough with us. And I have to say it was like a night and day of comfort for me and peace because, and I think for Voss too, because,
Sure, yeah.
he's looking at it in an investment way, but sometimes when you're not in real estate, you can't see the forest from the trees.
Right.
And we didn't know. And when you came in and said, okay, this room's fine, don't touch it. This room needs this.
Yeah.
It gave us such a direction. And I remember right after you left, I was like, thank the Lord Almighty for Nathan, because I just felt so much more confident and comfortable. And I've always said why I always recommend you to people is because you have this way of explaining things that makes me feel really, helps me understand, because real estate is not my thing. When my husband tells me everything that's going on, I kind of glaze over. I'm trying really hard to engage, but it just doesn't stick with me.
Yeah.
It's like chemistry for you. It just
Right.
doesn't stick.
Yeah.
But you were my tutor.
Yeah.
And when you came in, I understood it really well. And I felt really connected to the process. And I always tell people about you because you were such a peaceful addition to a very hectic time of our life.
Right.
And
Thank
we
you.
ended up getting 15 over asking, which we were even thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're asking this. We ended up making, a really good profit off our property, put
Yeah.
us in a good position. And I'm like eternally grateful for your participation in that.
Yeah, well, thank you for allowing me to help serve you. We really do like to, break it down when someone wants to sell their house, break it down exactly what needs to be done for you to maximize the
Yes.
most amount of money. And, sometimes we want to do things that we want, but
Right,
maybe maybe the buyers out there don't like. Or I have a lot of clients that they do something really, random, maybe a random color or something that some people will love and some
Right.
people will hate. That's what you want to avoid.
Right.
You want to do neutrals,
Right.
something that nobody's going to comment on.
Right.
Right. They're just going to see the house for what it is, and they'll be like, "Yep, I can move in right away." And-
Clean canvas.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's what we really try to focus on.
That's really smart.
And so not make it too personal to anyone.
We should have talked to you before we put that weird chandelier in the middle of the living room, but we both saw this really weird chandelier and we were like, that's so cool.
It was exactly that. It was a love or hate.
And the
chandelier.
lady
Yeah.
walked in and was like, "Oh, I love this." We ended up meeting the buyers later,
Oh, yeah.
and she told us, "I love what you guys did with this place. It's beautiful, man. This chandelier is weird." And
She said that?
I
Oh
laughed
my
because I
gosh.
thought that's so funny because
I know.
that stood out to me so much. I will say, Panda Express has the same chandeliers
They do.
in one of
Some of
their in their locations
Or
near us,
similar
and we
ones.
laugh every time we drive by. Those are those weird chandeliers that
That's
we
funny.
love. So, well, I wanted to
Awesome.
thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah. So Nathan King, and I work for EXP Realty, where it's an international firm. And so you can, if you just Google my name, I should pop up right there on Zillow or Realtor.com. But you can also reach me on my cell, which is 287-8687. Or you can send me an email at Nathan, Nathan, at nathankingre.com. That is my email, nathankingre.com.
If you're interested in moving forward with Nathan, or you even just need to talk to somebody, I would say Nathan is one of the best resources when you aren't sure how to move forward, but you really need that person to answer really valid questions for you. Just talk to Nathan. He's probably one of the easiest people to connect with and talk to, and we'll get you hooked up with him. Well, thank you so much, Nathan, for coming on today, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
We want to talk about today is you're branching into the real estate market, kind of brand new.
Yes.
Right. You came from the corporate world.
I did.
Yeah. Where were you working before this?
So I was actually the sales and marketing director at the Wyndham Senior Living.
Nice.
So for about 7 years.
And you were really good at your job.
Yes, I was very blessed and good at it. Yes.
Yeah. But then what made you decide to go into real estate with your husband?
Nathan's been doing real estate, I think, for about 5-6 years.
Okay.
I was very happy, very content in my job, loved it, loved working with seniors, family members, all that stuff. And little by little over the last couple of years, Nathan has just done really well. And ultimately, we had talked years ago about me just either being a stay-at-home mom when we had kids,
Yeah.
you know, or eventually joining him in family business. And so Nathan's always been an entrepreneur. And so we just really had an opportunity to think about that over the last couple of years based on his success. So I took the leap of faith eventually, finally, and decided to do that to help him, to be honest, and just go alongside him, support him, be that person that he needed in a sense to continue to grow his business.
Yeah. Something he could rely on every day, right?
Exactly.
And I think you guys are unique like that because Voss and I work together with his business, and I always say I could work with my husband every day.
Right.
And even through like conflict, we don't mind, disagreeing about something. It doesn't really mess us up. Some people are like, oh gosh, I can't. My husband and I think too different, and that's totally fine. But like we don't. We actually most of the time agree.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people were, quote unquote, judgmental about that. They're like, oh my gosh, how are you going to do it? You're never going to be able to work with your husband. I can never work with my husband. But yeah, I mean, at first it was definitely hard for sure.
Yeah.
So, but
I'm sure too, because he's in a position where he's like training and coaching you.
Yep.
And sometimes I'm sure he's like, Erica, you need to get up and do this. And you're probably like, you need to back off.
That's the nice way to say it.
Space because I'm figuring this out. And I'm, so real quick, let's touch on, you have a daughter.
Yes, we have a little girl. Her name's Macy James.
And she looks like the perfect blend of you two.
Oh, she's so beautiful and sweet and fun. And she's so independent.
Yeah, she is. She really is. She's kind of got this like strength about her.
Yeah.
That I love.
Yeah. She has both of our strong personalities for sure. She's our only daughter at this time. So
yeah. So I'm sure, you thinking about like, okay, I'm going to be, doing something that's a little more independent, right? You're going to be home based and everything you have to, there may be days where you're at home all day and you're working and you might have Macy with you. Right. And so you're like a working at home mom.
Yes.
And so tell me a little bit about that, your experience with that.
So in short, before all the things that are currently happening in this world were happening, Macy kept her same schedule. So she was in daycare 4 days a week.
Nice.
And had my mom watching her, Ellen, Nathan's mom, watching her, which was such a blessing. And I was able to kind of keep my same schedule as I would if I was a working parent, in a job that's not an independent job. And so we ended up really having the same situation, same schedule. And I would look forward to not having to worry about if she had a little event at school. Right. I could go to it. I wouldn't have to ask someone if I could, get her some time off work.
Be a little bit more involved in her life.
More involved. Yeah. So that was really, really nice of a transition. And really just enjoying the flexibility of the transition has really been an eye-opening. Trying not to take advantage of it too much, to be honest, because I'm so reliant on Nathan for everything that I do with work, and I kind of take that for granted sometimes. But I'm learning how to balance it to where I'm trying to own it more and make it more of my own, and also the real struggle of wanting to be there for my daughter as well and having the option to be there for her.
Right. And I think that's something that pulls because we've talked about this before. I used to work full time And when we used to get together as couples when we didn't have kids, we'd always talk about work and our jobs. And that was just something we were all really interested in. We were all interested in growing ourselves and building careers.
Right.
And it's just something that all four of us really related on. And when I started having kids and I had my son, I worked for a year and a half with him. And, it was like, okay, I got to experience what it was like to be a working mom, not being there all the time. That's hard,
It is.
realizing like I get, 2 hours in the morning and that's rushed because I'm getting ready.
Right.
And then we commuted, I'd drop him off and then I'd be gone for like 10 hours because with commute time and lunch and then pick him up, go home. And now you're just trying to like, how do I make dinner? How do I go grocery shopping? How do I get my errands done? How do I clean?
Right.
Which I think I just had a dirty house and we ate really weird food probably during that time. I think my husband cleaned. And then I still want to invest in my child and spend time with them. And I remember days at work where I would just miss my son. And then there were times I knew he was okay and I was really enjoying what I was doing.
Right.
And so I remember when I worked, it's kind of a double-edged sword, but you always feel like you're not there 100%.
Right.
And then when I had my daughter, I planned to go back and she was just way too attached to me. And my son is like, can go with anybody. And she's not like that. And I was crying every single day, like literally every day for like 3 months.
Right.
Like, how am I going to go back? How am I going to do this? I can do this with one, but now I have to take that little bit of time I have at the end of the day and have to split it between 2 children.
Right.
And if my daughter was a little more independent, I don't think it would have been as hard, but she wasn't at all.
Right.
She was very dependent and connected and wouldn't take a bottle. So I decided to stay home. We decided to go to a 1-income family, which was really hard.
Right.
That's when Nathan came in and helped us sell our house because we were just not making it.
Right.
And that was when I realized during the transition to a full-time mom, which was harder than working, by the way, because kind of like what you're doing, nobody directs your day. Nobody says, okay, Alia, today you're going to get up and you're going to do the dishes and then you're going to mop the floors. And then, you should probably start at least 2 loads of laundry. Nobody says that to you. Right. You have to like fill your day and do activities for your child. And I'm not really that good at that kind of stuff. I'm better at working.
Yeah.
So that was really hard for me to emotionally adjust to.
Right.
Because I was really good at my job. I can say that. And I was really used to being successful.
Right.
And I'm sure you've kind of felt this in moments where it's like, I'm used to being successful and now I'm doing something where I can't tell if I'm being successful because the investment is long-term.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I completely can relate to everything you just said. I think it's different for every single woman.
Yeah.
And that's what's nice about having conversations about it is because you can kind of understand the other person's perspective. For me, I definitely was very successful, very comfortable in my job, very good at that, and really liked getting up and having a routine and getting ready and then getting dressed and then looking my best for the day, dropping Macy off, knowing that she's in a wonderful, engaging environment at school.
Right.
And that was all positive for me. So I really was I am the kind of mom that likes to work and likes to balance that.
Right.
I definitely I'm not the type that's like, I want to be a stay-at-home mom, like for the, my whole life. I've never really said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've definitely, adjusted and realized that these are definitely some short-lived years that we have with our kids too. So that's where my battle is all the time lately is I'm battling the fact that I love to make a difference in the world. I love to help people. I love to contribute to, people in general. And especially with real estate, it's a big emotional decision. But I also want to take these years and these moments with my daughter. And so that's the struggle that I find myself going back and forth with sometimes.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, being a stay-at-home mom, that struggle doesn't change at all. Like I thought staying home was going to mean that I was going to feel like a really good mother because I was there all the time, but there's still the same amount of motivation that you have to have at being a stay-at-home to invest in your children as it is when you're working. Mm-hmm. And that's probably the hardest thing that I went through was, well, first of all, I didn't have a community. The only people I knew were from my work and my job. And I had a couple of friends who had kids. That was it. But once you don't work there, you're not going to talk to them every day and relate. So I had no community. And all of a sudden I was doing this home thing and I didn't know the rules. And I just knew, like, on social media, you know, you see people like making food, and I wasn't good at any of that stuff. And that was the transition just pulled so much at my insecurity, because I was like, I'm not good at routines. I'm really good when someone else tells me what to do. Like, if someone says, Alia, here's a list of things I need you to accomplish, I will accomplish it and then tenfold. Like, I can go above and beyond. But I didn't know how to organize myself on a daily basis. So I think I spent a lot of time on the couch in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had an infant, so I felt like I had an excuse to just like sit and nurse and, you know, but I felt like it took a lot of time for me to gain the confidence, and it took a year for me to figure out what I was doing.
Right.
I did finally get connected with a group. My church, North Point, provides a mother's group called Mom to Mom. Gotten affiliated with them and started attending and getting to sit down with other mothers and talking about, you know, what they were going through was such a help, because I realized, oh, even these moms have been doing it for 10 years or 15 or 20 years. They still feel this way. This feeling isn't going to go away. Right. Like, I'm not waiting for this feeling to leave, or I'm not broken because I feel it.
Right.
It is what you feel when you're a mother. You feel a certain sense of, am I enough?
Absolutely.
And the overcoming of that is a personal growth that you go through. It's not a time thing.
Right.
Because I would tell myself, well, if I was here since McCoy's birth, I would know what I was doing.
Right.
Or maybe if my mom was more involved, like my mom wasn't a mom. You know, she either always worked, or when she didn't work, she was very social. And I don't remember her really being that involved with us. She wasn't an activity mom. You know, she didn't color with us and build stuff.
Right.
She put us in front of the television,
right.
which was for our time very normal.
Right. Mine too.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so I think that when I look back, I don't have these like tangible memories of like, I'm going to recreate these moments that my mom created for me. And so for me, it felt like just this empty floor. Like, how do I just pull this out of nowhere? Yep. And all I know to do is just compare to people who look so successful on social media and everywhere else. You know, I see moms doing all these things. So I think it was, you know, realizing, okay, I'm scared and I don't know what I'm doing and I need help and I need other people around me who I can talk to and open up about the things that I'm struggling with and not see it as like someone's going to think less of me because I don't know what I'm doing, but they're going to, you know, really help me find myself in it.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. That insecurity part is something that definitely comes out in me too, where my parents, you know, were working parents and, you know, we had babysitters and stuff here and there, but, you know, where that struggle is, you know, everybody doesn't want to do what their parents did or wants to do what their parents have done for them in different positive ways. So I definitely want Macy to know me as a, you know, involved mom and everything, but I also know that I turned out just fine. And, you know, my mom did the best she could. And we were definitely, you know, a great, loving family. So having that balance of transitioning for me is, you know, month to month, it changes. Honestly, last month, maybe the month before that, I would be talking with you and I'd be like, I'm so, you know, stressed out about work and I need to figure out how to do this and work with the clients and things. And then as I get more comfortable with my work, it kind of gives me a sense of identity, since I was from a very young age, you know, a working person. So to me, I find a lot of my identity in what I can do
same here.
With work. So because it's just what you have to do as a surviving human being. You work to survive and build what you need for yourself.
And I feel like I see this a lot in, you know, women I know who stay home and I think almost everybody wants to do something outside of that.
Right.
Some people love it. Some people I know, they love it. They live for it and they feel very fulfilled. Good for you. I wish I could be you. I don't.
Right.
You know, and it's hard to say as a mother, just being with my kids every day doesn't feel like enough.
Right.
Because I'm very self-motivated and I love to build things and I have dreams and ideas. And for me, building this podcast was like this other thing that I could be working on that's an expression of who I am. It was the creative side of me. You know, some women, they have this ability to like have all these interests. And for me, business is my interest. I've always loved it. You know, I don't paint anymore. That's like a really thing I used to do like long time ago. It's not really something part of my life. I'm not a big reader, to be honest. I like to listen to things. So
Podcast.
podcast. So for me, what was so hard was that I desired this part of me that needed to get back. I needed to, infill inside, and being at home with the kids wasn't doing that 100% because I think because it's constantly a give. You're serving, especially with 2 little ones now. It's like I'm either getting a snack, or I'm cleaning something, or I'm entertaining, or I'm handling a dispute between the children, or I'm doing something else.
Yeah.
And all of that, at the end of the day, you just kind of feel empty.
Right.
And I love my kids, and that's not a question, not even in question. I get the cuddles and the loves, and my kids are sweethearts, and they say the funniest things, but I just had a desire to do even more.
Right.
And I think that that's kind of like a calling inside yourself to ask, like, what could I do? And podcasting was something I kind of fell on. I mentioned to a friend, and we just started doing it, and I found that I loved it.
Right.
And I loved how it made me feel. And I loved that I could still kind of build it like a business.
Right.
And see it grow and feel that feeling of achievement.
Right. I'm so busy. I'm focused. I'm trying to balance everything. I'm trying to work and be a good realtor and be a good wife to my husband to support him. But also I want to create the environment in my home that my kids will then say, this is how I do it. This is my entertaining style. This is my, having company over style. And so those are the things that I kind of strive for with my family on that end, to where it's like, okay, how do you do your work, and then also kind of cut it off at 5 p.m. and then try to have your dinners and your prayer time and routines at home that are enjoyable and fulfilling to everybody without being forced.
Right.
So,
well, and it's really not that clean either. Like, that sounds like a fantastic plan.
See, that's a plan.
That's
right?
a plan.
It's not reality.
It's not reality. Okay, so I have a funny story. So was it yesterday when I called you to do this podcast?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when I called you yesterday, I got off the phone. I was feeling really good. I had this great conversation with you about what we're going to do. I needed to get ready for something. So I thought, I know, I'll put the kids in like our big bath with just a little bit of water. It gives them something to play with so I can get dressed and just kind of get myself ready for the day. And so while I'm getting my clothes ready, I look at my daughter, and she's making poop face. And I've got 2 kids in there. So now I run over, I take her out of the bath. There's poop in the water. So I'm like, McCoy, get out now. I yank him out of the water. I'm frantically, it's like kind of quarantine. That's a funny thing.
Yeah,
Sorry. Quarantine to this side. So I'm trying to frantically get toys out of the bathtub. I'm trying to figure out, how do I get this poop out? Oh my gosh. If I find a cup that we use to like kind of bathe the kids, it's like one of our plastic cups that we have in the house. I'm scooping it out. I look over, and she is still pooping. So now I have her. She's pooping on the floor. She has now walked away and pooped into the carpet. My husband's on a business call in the other room. So I'm also trying to be quiet, and I'm trying to get the 3-year-old not to, he's running around like, mommy, baby's pooping. And he's running, and I'm trying to get him not to run in the poop. And so I'm having this like kind of breakdown. This entire time I am naked because remember, I was changing. And I was literally in the middle, so I'm a pregnant naked lady.
Oh my God.
Don't visualize it. And I'm trying to do all of this while naked and pregnant and quietly and try to pick up poop. So I like just tell them like, go, just go. Just like, you guys get out of this way so I can pick this up, and I'm getting it all together. And so I think it's over. I've kind of cleaned it up. I walk out to call, like to kind of go over, and my daughter has continued pooping. I don't even know what. She must have had an upset stomach. She walks up to me, and she still has poop all over you. And then at this point, I yell to my husband, like, I need you right now. I need you. I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I need you to come. He gets off the phone, and I just started crying. Like, I'm just like, and it's that stress crying where you're trying to hold it all together so strong, to be strong for these moments, because, these aren't everyday occurrences, but they are, they make you feel panicked, and they make you feel on edge. And so this really great conversation I had with you ended with this really bad episode. So my husband came over and was so sweet, and like, I'll take care of it. I got the carpet. I'll wash the baby, get a diaper on this one, get an underwear, ended it. Okay. So that was great. And it happened. It just made me realize like how when you're working at home and you're doing a lot of things in your own home with your children around you, like there's, in the mode of thinking about the podcast and what I wanted to do. And then that happened, and you get constantly interrupted.
Right.
And that interruption just continues to happen.
Right.
Throughout. Worst part of it. So in the franticism of everything, if that's a word, I put the cup on the counter and I walked away because I was running after a child. And like not 10 minutes after it was all over, my husband walked over and picked up the cup and started to put water in it to drink out of it. And I was like, no, that's the poop cup. What are you doing? I had put it with like the dirty dishes. I'd kind of swirled some soap in it, but I didn't. He almost drank out of the poop cup, which to me was like the worst thing. He thought it was funny. I did not think it was funny. And I was like, are you drinking from dirty cups in our house? Like, is this a phenomenon? Is this something that happens when I'm not around? But again, there's so much that happens in our home that shapes the way we view ourselves as people, as parents. Also shapes the way we look at our home and say, like, is this all normal? Like, I know this happens to people.
Right.
But it doesn't feel so clean cut when it's happening to you.
Right.
It feels messy and it feels exhausting. And that kind of took all my energy. I'm 8 months pregnant.
Right.
After that episode, I was kind of done for like a couple of hours.
Right.
That blew my motivation. I was going to sit down and work on the episode a little bit. And so, all that factors in to who we are as mothers, because we are dealing with these like little unpredictable people who do really silly things. And, all I wanted to do was change and get ready and have them do something fun while I'm doing that, enjoy themselves.
Right.
And it turned into like 30 or 40 minutes of cleaning carpets and scrubbing poop everywhere and just trying to make sure nobody touched the poop towel. And
so the expectations that we have when we're just, trying to make a plan or be organized, like you said earlier, it doesn't always work out how we want it to work out.
And I think your brain doesn't say, okay, now you're going to be less successful. You're going to have to make room. Your brain just says, like, you have to do both.
Right.
You have to find a way to pick up the poop and also find a way to still manage the business.
Exactly.
And show up. My life can either be this never ending cleaning, snack making, food making, tidying, playing music, all these things for my kids. That it can be all. And that's okay for some people, but for some people it's not.
Right.
And I just want to encourage people that, like, if you want to do something more and you're feeling this sense of like, I need to do something more with my life and with my time, that feeling is okay.
Right.
And it's okay to seek out something else that fulfills who you are, because before you had kids, and even especially before you had a husband, before you had a spouse, you did things that you loved and that made you feel good, and you invested in yourself and you took care of yourself by filling your life with interests. And there's this really weird thing that happens when you get married and you have all these responsibilities and you add people like children to the mix, and you add mortgages and bills, that you slowly squeeze out the self-interest and you squeeze out the, like, who am I outside of being a mother? And that's why some people ask me, like, why didn't you just do a podcast about, your experience as a mother? I'm like, because I'm more than that. Like, there's all these facets of who I am, and this is the person I'm facilitating. On top of that, I'm also a mother, and that adds to my experience. But I'm really big on, like, I have multiple hats that I wear, and I can't just focus on one thing in my life, because otherwise, if my kids aren't doing good that day, guess what? I'm going to feel like a failure, because that's all I do.
Right.
And my husband was his mom had 13 children. So he was really big on, like, it's okay. You need to have other things in your life. You have interest, because on those days when my kids aren't doing good, I don't just base my entire value off of that. I have other things that are going on. So
exactly.
Well, thank you, Erica, for coming on today and talking to me about this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alia. It's an honor to be on your show.
Hi, my name's Teresa Jarrett. I'm the coordinator of Mom to Mom at North Point Community Church here in Fresno, California. And we like to say we're a mom's group for moms of all ages with kids of all ages. And that isn't an exaggeration. We have young moms with young kids. We have middle-aged moms with kids that are in high school and exiting. And then we have those mamas who just started joining us a couple years ago that are empty nesters with grandkids. And so, but what's the saying? Once a mom, always a mom. And so Mom to Mom started up here in Fresno in 2010. And, we started out with 12 women that joined us that first year. And now, 9 years later, we're up to 65. There's many women out there that don't have outlets or groups of other women that understand what they're going through. And so, because there's that need, I'm able to help fill it at Mom to Mom.